Hi, friends. I'm going to tell either a scary story or multiple scary stories. I'm not exactly sure which. Uh, this first one appears to be pretty long, so we'll see how long it takes to read through this, and we'll go from there. This is called Girls' Night Out. Isabella and Chloe were two typical American teenage girls. After school, they spent all of their time together, watching scary movies, having sleepovers, shopping for new clothes. They liked partying, keeping up with their friends, having fun, and just enjoying life. They had no way of knowing the horrible fate that life had in store for them. One night, Isabella and Chloe decided to have a girls' night out. They planned to sneak out to a nightclub as soon as their parents went to sleep. Isabella kissed her parents goodnight and went upstairs to bed. When she thought that everyone had gone to sleep, she took out her cell phone, called her friend Chloe, and told her to meet her at the store down the street. Chloe agreed and hung up. Isabella quietly opened the bedroom window, trying not to wake anyone. She stepped out onto the windowsill and climbed down the drain pipe. As she walked down the deserted street, she got a strange feeling that she was being watched. The hairs on the back of her neck pricked up. She glanced behind her, but she was alone. When she came to the corner store, there was nobody around, so she took out her cell phone and called Chloe. "Okay, I'm at the store," she said. "Hurry up or I'm going home." "What's wrong?" asked Chloe. "I don't know," replied Isabella. "This just doesn't feel like other nights. Something doesn't feel right. I've got a bad vibe." "Stop it. You're just being paranoid," laughed Chloe. "I'll be there in 2 minutes." Isabella hung up the phone, but she couldn't shake that feeling that someone or something was watching her. 5 minutes later, Chloe turned up and the two girls walked together to the nightclub. Girls were too young to get into the club, but the bouncers never asked them for an ID. They strolled inside, and pretty soon they were dancing to the music and flirting with guys on the dance floor. Around 3 a.m., Isabella was chatting to a really cute guy who must have been at least 10 years older than her. Suddenly, she felt her phone vibrating in her pocket. It was a text message from her ex-boyfriend Anthony. She hadn't heard from him since they broke up a month ago. The text read, "Come outside, I've got a huge surprise for you." Curious, she looked around and saw Chloe busy talking to some other man. So, without saying goodbye, Isabella walked out the door of the nightclub. She had just taken a few steps when she received another text message. It read, "Meet you around the corner, over by the dumpster." The street was dimly lit and deserted. Isabella had a bad feeling in the pit of her stomach. Something didn't feel right, but she told herself she was just being overcautious. Inside the nightclub, Chloe was looking for her friend. After waiting for 15 minutes, she began to grow impatient. She scanned the dance floor, but there was no sign of Isabella. She even checked the toilets, but they were empty. At 3:27 a.m., a relieved Chloe got a text from Isabella. It read, "Meet me outside now." When Chloe got outside, she received another text. "I'm around the corner, over by the dumpster. Come watch me sparkle." Chloe followed the directions, crossing the dark and lonely street. When she rounded the corner, she was confronted by a horrific sight. Her heart almost froze in her chest. Isabella was hanging upside down from a street light in the parking lot behind the dumpster. Sparkling Christmas tree lights were wrapped around her ankles. There was a large pool of blood below her. Her body was completely stripped of clothing, revealing deep wounds along her stomach and chest. Chloe fell to the ground and began screaming hysterically. Some people who were standing at the door of the nightclub heard her cries and came rushing over. When they turned the corner and saw Isabella's bloody corpse hanging in front of them, they were horrified. The police were called and they questioned Chloe for hours. Still in a state of hysteria, she could barely talk. Sobbing uncontrollably, she told them how she and Isabella had snuck out that night and gone to the nightclub together. She tried to remember all of the guys they had talked to and flirted with on the dance floor. They asked her if she knew anyone who would want to harm Isabella, but she couldn't think of anyone. As much as she wanted to catch Isabella's killer, she was of no help to the investigation. During the interrogation, one of the cops produced a plastic bag and took a bloody stained envelope. "We found this lodged in your friend's throat. It's addressed to you," said the cop as he handed her the envelope. "Chloe" was scrawled across the front. With trembling hand, she took out the piece of paper inside and read it. The letter read, "Maybe if you stayed in bed like you were supposed to, things like this wouldn't happen. Don't go sneaking around at night. Bad things can happen." The cops had to grab her before she fainted. An ambulance took Chloe to the hospital and she was treated for shock. When Chloe returned home the next day, she was still shaken. Her parents told her that Isabella's ex-boyfriend, Anthony, had been arrested for the murder. He was later released after passing a lie detector test. He claimed his phone had been stolen the day of the murder. The police didn't rule him out as a suspect in the case, but they didn't have enough evidence to charge him. As fate would have it, Isabella's murder would remain unsolved. Nobody was ever brought to trial for the crime, and as time went on, people began to forget about it. 2 years had passed, and Chloe had almost managed to forget about the terrible night when her best friend had been savagely murdered. One night, she called her boyfriend and asked him to meet her at the park. It was about 2 a.m. She began to walk to the park, but felt a strange presence, just like the one Isabella had told her about, the night she was murdered. She was almost to the park when the feeling came across her, so she let it go. Her phone beeped. It was a text message from her boyfriend. "Almost there, baby. Love you lots." It made her feel much better. Her last task was to pass by the store. The park was on the other side. She began to walk, but heard something behind her. Immediately, she began to run. Her boyfriend got to the park and waited for about 15 minutes. At 2:35 a.m., he got a text from Chloe. It read, "Keep walking forward, and you will see me." He did as the text suggested and walked forward. There, hanging upside down from a tree, was the mutilated body of Chloe. Christmas tree lights were wrapped around her ankles, and she was completely naked and covered in blood. He called the police and was interrogated all night. The next day, when Chloe's boyfriend got home, there was a letter waiting for him on his parents' doorstep. It was stained with small drops of blood. The note inside read, "Don't go sneaking around at night. Bad things can happen. I wish I could tell you that the murders of Isabella and Chloe were solved, but that's just not the case. Today, the police say the investigation is still ongoing, but they have no new leads. The murders are seldom spoken about nowadays. They were high-profile cases at the time, but due to the strange lack of evidence, people soon forgot about them. Everyone who was involved went on with their lives. You may be wondering how I know so much about these cases. Well, I'd rather not go into it, considering it is still an ongoing investigation. If you must know, I was the cop who was assigned to the case. I was the cop who handed Chloe the bloodstained letter. You may also be wondering why the murders were never solved. Well, like I always say, don't go sneaking around at night. Bad things can happen." Pretty interesting story there. Now, this next one I'm going to tell you guys is a story that I think many of you probably know, and this is called Krampus. Krampus gets his name from the old German word for claw. In Austria, Santa Claus is called Saint Nicholas, and his helper is a terrifying demon named Krampus, who travels with him on Christmas Eve. Krampus is a red-faced goat-horned demon who is covered in shaggy black fur. He has chains hanging from his body, and he rings a large cowbell. He has a long, wagging red tongue, a tail, and carries a big stick and a large black bag. On Christmas Eve, Austrian children place their shoes on the windowsill or outside their bedroom door. While they sleep, Santa Claus and Krampus visit their house. If they've been good, Santa leaves candy and treats in their shoes. If they've been bad, Krampus beats them with his stick. If they've been really bad, Krampus puts them in a sack, carries them off, and throws them in a river. Just imagine this. It's Christmas Eve. You've just finished watching a Christmas movie with your family, or singing Christmas carols by the fireside. You're settling down to sleep when suddenly, an enormous shaggy monster with horns bursts into your bedroom, dragging chains and ringing a bell. He attacks you and beats you over the head with a stick while you scream for your parents to help you. Then, he stuffs you into a bag and kidnaps you as your parents stand by and do nothing. Finally, he throws you into a river and drowns you. All this because you didn't behave yourself during the year. The legend of Krampus became so popular that his story spread throughout Europe. It became especially popular in the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, and northern Italy. Today, Krampus Day is celebrated on December 5th. In country towns, some men dress up in furs, heavy boots, and ghoulish masks topped with horns. Then, carrying sticks and ringing bells, they go around town, visiting the houses of families with small children. When the parents open the doors, the men run in and terrorize the kids. They start growling and whipping the air with their sticks. The children scream and cry. After everyone's had a good fright, the parents invite the men to sit down and have a drink. Just when you thought Christmas was the one time of year that couldn't be scary, along comes Krampus. Okay, I think this will be the last one that I read to you guys. This is called Carol Singers. My grandfather was a drunk and my father was a drunk, but I never touched a drop. There's a reason for that. When I was young, times were hard and I grew up poor. My grandfather and my father never did an honest day's work in their lives. Granddad wasn't good for much, but he played the clarinet like an artist. He taught my father how to play the accordion. Every Christmas, they would gather a group of their friends and go from door to door, playing Christmas music, singing Christmas carols, and begging for money. Afterwards, they would all go down to the pub and spend it on alcohol. One Christmas Eve, they brought me with them. I was too young to play an instrument, so they handed me a triangle and told me to strike it every now and then. The night was dark, the snow was falling, and a cold December wind cut through us like a knife. We kept our heads down and trudged through the snow and the sleet. Eventually, my grandfather stopped and said, "This looks like as good a place as any." We were outside a big mansion, decorated with Christmas lights. My grandfather knocked on the front door, and we began to play some old Christmas carols. The door of the house swung open, and in the dim light, I saw a young woman standing there. She was holding a tray of glasses in her hands. With a smile, she picked up a glass and held it out, inviting one of the men to drink. My grandfather rubbed his hands together with glee and took the glass. Just then, I looked up, and in the window above, I saw a face peering out of the shadows. A face that was hideous beyond words. I looked back at the woman in the doorway, and her face was hideous too. Before I could stop him, my grandfather put the glass to his lips and knocked it back with one big gulp. "Oh dear," said the woman in an eerie, childish voice. "You've drunk blood, sir." With that, the door slammed shut. My grandfather stumbled backwards and the glass fell from his hands. It shattered with a deafening crash and he collapsed in the snow. I don't remember much after that. All I recall is waking up in the light of dawn and finding myself lying in the snow. The other men were lying all around me, just waking up themselves. My father got to his feet and rubbed his head. The woman had disappeared and the house was boarded up and abandoned. All that was left was a dark red stain in the snow where the glass had broken. My grandfather lay there in the snow beside it, his face all purple and swollen. He was as dead as a doornail. We hurried home that morning and called the police. They picked up my grandfather's body and brought it to the mortuary. My father told them what had happened, but they didn't believe a word of his tale. They said the house had been vacant for over 100 years. After that night, my father was never the same man again. Never let another drop of alcohol touch his lips and made sure I did the same. Alright, guys, that will be it for now. I promise I'll be back very soon. I'm gonna do something other than Christmas stories, but for right now, it's almost Christmas, so I figure I might as well do some Christmas stories. So yeah, I will see you guys soon, and I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate you being here so much. It means the world to me that anyone would be here and actually listen to my content. So thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. I can't tell you how grateful I am. So yeah, I will see you guys next time.